Hello, and welcome to this round two coverage of, a round of the action in round two of the US Chess Championship. This one is a little late. Yesterday I had things to do. We had closing ceremony of the Icelandic Basketball Federation, where I am a referee, so I was out having a good time yesterday. And then this morning there was like the general meeting of the Icelandic Chess Federation, so a lot to do, but for completeness sake, we will of course cover round two as well. So yeah, enough talk. Let's jump to the games. Before this round, only two guys managed to win the first round: Ray Robson and Alex Lendeman. So they're leading the tournament at this early stage. But on the women's side, we had four decisive games, one of them being the favorite, Irina Krush, or one of the two favorites. But like I already said, enough talk, on to the games. So the first game we're going to look at is Shankland against Robson. And yeah, I got a request. It wasn't my intention to keep the graphic above the player's name, so now you can see the player name on the bottom. But it blocks the move list, so it gives something, you get something in life. So Shankland with the white pieces against Robson, and they went for the Petrov defense. Sometimes also called the Russian game. Depends on how you want to call it. Doesn't matter. I usually call it the Petrov. And they followed some well-known opening moves here. White retreated his bishop. He wants to keep the bishop pair, not allow black to chop off bishop for the knight. And this has all been seen before. Not my area of expertise, but I've seen positions like this before. And now this interesting move, rook a2. And I think the idea is to activate the rook via the second rank, where we can put pressure on b7. And sometimes there's also a rook coming to b5, as we'll see after a few moves. Rook b2, now rook b5 is threatened with a double attack. So black must do something about this. Robson also had a Petrov in the first round, didn't he, with white pieces? I think so. And I think in general he's somewhat of an expert in the Petrov. I seem to recall a game he played, I think in the World Cup, where he was really booked up and well prepared and won a game there. But okay. Knight e5, and this is a pawn sacrifice. Bishop takes a3. Quite an interesting one. Bishop f3 activates the bishop, so all the pieces are active now. And now rook e2. Black took on c1. And now the immediate threat is knight c4, when we will use our active pieces to win some material. There's an attack on the knight, attack on the rook. Black can't defend against both. Yeah, of course, there's attack on the queen, so knight c6 he played. He wants to simplify. If take, we take on e2, and maybe black has a trump in the endgame with the passed a pawn, but none of that was allowed, so b2. And now knight takes e5. Yeah, okay, if we try to hang on to the pawn, that's actually quite difficult. And well, bishop c8 is probably just a blunder. We take on c6, and this is undefended. And if you try to defend it something like this, then you have to watch out, because knight takes, and there's an attack here, so we can't take back. And if we take on e2, simply take back, and there's a pin on this pawn, so it can't recapture the piece. White wins a piece. Another idea might be this move, but this is a really ugly move to make. Your rooks aren't really active here. The only idea associated with this move is, I guess, to try and use this a pawn, but that's a long way from being realized. I'm not sure what what white could do here. The question is if the end game is good, if he takes on c6. But knight c4 also looks like an idea. And overall, black needs to be careful. Something like this maybe. With d7. And maybe even d5. I mean, if bishop d3. Oh, of course, d5. Yeah, must be okay. I mean, the knight has to go to a really bad square. Can't go to d yet because rook jack. And going to knight a7 with a knight to a7, then it must be okay to be a pawn down here. We can put a rook on the 7th and be at some point. Okay. I didn't really have a look at this, so but it looks good for white. So instead he took on e5, rook takes, and rook takes. So this is attacked. Can't defend this pawn. So bishop d7. Now we take the pawn. Rook e8. He took, and here white could have more or less gotten a very advantageous position, maybe winning one with bishop to e2, but seems like he switched the move order. He went queen a8, let's see it, queen a8, king f8, bishop e2, but not queen a3. And there's counterplay because if we take here, we take here. If he had switched the move order and gone bishop e2 instead, now there's no queen a3 because most likely we can just take on c7. Protecting this pawn, there's no background mate. We have time to make Luft on next move because queen check, bishop, bishop. Black has to remember he also has background issues. So, yeah, this is probably the chance that Shankland missed. And after this, it's yeah, most likely a drawn bishop ending. And here, he must have been somewhat disgusted, and a draw was agreed. Okay, on we go. Onischuk against Ehrenberg. Alexander Onischuk, who is the second seed in the tournament after Garakamsky. With the white pieces, he also drew in the first round. But with the black pieces, so looking to get on the board here. And we had Semislav with a6. Normal development, it seems. Bishop back to d6, really solid play by black, but white always has slight space advantage. So black tries to strike here with e5. And yeah, white could have gone for the isolated queen pawn, but black seems quite active here. And in some cases you have to watch out for the Greek gift. But overall, in a position like this, black seems active enough. Bishop can come out, and then the rook to the c file. And we can even think about pushing the pawn, and once we get rid of that weakness and catch up in development, black should be doing fine. So instead, looks like Onischuk wanted to complicate things with e4. And the pawn takes d4. We had some exchanges here. Knight f6, he's going for this pawn. So we're moving in on more or less symmetrical territory. If they both take on d5 and d4, we have both sides have a castle king, and both sides have a and a b pawn. The only difference is how they have moved, but this would be really drawish if we just exchange here, but it didn't do it immediately. Rook c8 and b6, and now white took on d4. Here black played rook c5, but the funniest continuation would have been knight takes, just any move, and then rook on d file, just to finish this ridiculous constellation of pieces on on the d file. Yeah, I would be curious to see if I'm sure we could, but I don't think there are many cases of pieces being on the same file and games between strong chess players. But this is really funny. But okay, he went to rook c5 and wanted to capture the pawn with the rook. What happened here was knight f3, rook takes d5, bishop c4, rook h5. So again, symmetrical pawn structure, but the white pieces are slightly better placed. This rook is a bit artificial here on h5, and some potential tactical problems with the bishop here. Bishops on d file here together. Bishop c3. Now we see an attack on this guy, and if he moves, then we might take here, and this guy is hanging. So what does it do? Knight e4, attacking this. Bishop e5, attacking this. So again, more or less forced here to take, and now rook takes d7. Pressure on this. Possible pressure on this, and possible tactical problems with move like g4 when the rook can't defend the bishop. So let's see what black does here. b5, okay, and now rook e1. Pawn takes c4 and rook takes e4. Now, if black moves the bishop, and he can certainly do that, then he will have to suffer. He's down a pawn here, and he doesn't really have good play against anything, so he would have to suffer here, a pawn down, most likely a lost ending. So looks like things have gone wrong, and instead of defending the bishop, he wanted to counterplay with pawn takes b3. Okay, what took the piece with a knight, and now pawn takes a2. Counting on counterplay with his pawn, which is threatening the queen. And at first glance, it looks like everything should be under control. Yeah, the first problem here is, well, that's what I thought. Yeah, something like this, or maybe just this move. Now we're threatening this guy, rook to a4, and if knight takes a2, then we have a pin here. We're gonna win this knight, and if rook takes, I think we can get away with this move. And whichever rook white captures, we capture the other one, and there's no bailout with a check here. Black should be okay. So therefore he plays rook e1, and soon we reach a funny position. So the general feeling, I mean, without having analyzed anything, the general feeling is that this is firmly blockaded. White should be able to maneuver somehow to make the extra piece count, but then again, it's not so easy. Black will always have two guys on the a pawn, but it's hard to get three white pieces on the a pawn, so maybe it's not so easy. Knight d1, rook b1, knight c3. Now we get this funny move here, rook c4. And it's hard to release the tension here. White went rook takes b1, black made a queen, and we have to take with a knight, but now rook c1 check, king h2. And originally the computer is, well, it doesn't get it, but it says like plus 1 point something for white. But the thing is, this pin just completely equalizes for black, and the idea is simply to move this pawn to a2. But white must recapture, and after a5 the game was agreed drawn. White can't move anything here, and we're simply going to move this pawn down the board. Nothing to be done whatsoever. a2, rook takes, and rook takes b1, and this is completely drawn. 3 against 3. Even with the active king, it doesn't matter. So Yeah, nice escape from Ehrenburg. He was in trouble, but instead of suffering a pawn down, he just went for a little more practical chance with counterplay and with some problems for his opponent to solve, and in the end that worked out for him. So another draw, and now we move on to Mackenzie Molnar against Voroshan Akobian, and they played a Caro-Kann. Advanced variation. The difference between the advanced variation and the Caro-Kann in the French is that black gets the bishop out here in the Caro-Kann. So in general in chess, if you have a formation like this, getting the bishop out of it is almost always beneficial to you, because then the bishop is not restricted by its own pawns. So knight c8. Yeah, this is a common idea in the Caro-Kann, and one that Lars Schandorf really liked in his book of the Caro-Kann, Grandmaster Repertoire, published by Quality Chess. Bishop e7, pawn c5. So compared to the advanced variation in French, black loses a tempo with c6, c5, but the bishop is out, and that's much more important. So g4 was played, and f4, trying to trap this bishop with pawn to f5, but black first took on d4, and now he f5 is probably too dangerous. My guess here is, without looking, we take here, we must take back, and now something like this. We have 3 pawns for the piece, and now all of a sudden we have an active rook. We have bishop jack maybe coming, queen coming to h4. All of a sudden the black pieces become really active. So I have a feeling simply rejected that continuation and took back on d4. And now pawn to f5, trying to preserve this bishop. So black is offering white to create some weaknesses on e6, but white went knight g2 instead. The point, however, is that black also gets active play. Probably knight takes, maybe bishop takes, attacking this pawn. I'm not sure, but I mean, this pawn cannot be attacked immediately, and we have ideas of using our knights to occupy this e4 square. And black probably gets enough activity with the pieces here, a bit tied down here on the back ranks. So knight g2, trying to improve the pieces, and a4, just trying to keep a solid structure here. Pawn d4, mountain takes, bishop takes, castles, and yeah, probably I would like to play bishop f5. Not necessary, but the knight stands well here on e3, blocking any attempts of bishop f5. This f5 square is usually a good blockading square for black, and if we can get a knight there, we can exchange the light squared bishops and jump a knight here. It's looking quite good for black. But okay, they maneuvered around a bit here. The bishop went back to f5, and now takes. So now we have this blocked center here, and the kings aren't really in any danger, even though we have an open g-file. I mean, for black, there's no danger on this diagonal, and even though this diagonal is slightly more dangerous, there's no good way for black to get any pieces on it. So they maneuvered a bit here. White is probably slightly better, because black hasn't quite solved his coordination here on the queen side, and the white pieces are more active. On the other hand, black starts to fix his pieces here. Knight a7, knight is coming to c6, eyeing the b4 square, eyeing the d4 pawn, and bishop g5. And here I think in general the two knights are doing quite well against the bishop and the knight, because even though this bishop is quite solid, keeping the position together. It doesn't have many great active possibilities, and my feeling here is I would prefer black here if given a choice. However, white started to maneuver another knight here to g5, giving him good play. So probably my feeling was black lost some time here, and white starts to get active here. Good knight on g5. Now we come to the interesting point in the game, knight d7. We don't have time to take here. King f2, take on b7, he takes on f3, we take on c6, there's a jack here, and black wins a piece. So therefore king f2, and note how powerful this king and knight are together. This queen can't even deliver one check in this position. So quite a good pattern to know about with the king and the knight together. But here comes, the critical point of the game. White is now threatening to take on b7. And since black can't really activate this queen so easily, and somewhat problematic to defend the queen side maybe once the queen starts to penetrate. He found this nice move, knight takes d4, and this seems to force a draw because white has to take back, but now queen takes h2. And there's no escaping the perpetual, and they had a few more moves here, but then they agreed to a draw. The thing is, we can't go to e1 because there's a jack here to win the piece. And in general, the queen and the knight tandem will be better than the queen and the bishop. So let's say, only black can win here. Also, if we go to e2, there's a jack here, and now, okay, we either continue giving jacks, I guess something like this, or again, if we go to the first rank, there's this jack, and finally, if we go to d3, we lose the game immediately with knight g5 jack. So the perpetual was forced, and that's what they went for. That's how the game ended. So okay, on to the top seed, Gareth Kamsky, 27-13 against Alejandro Ramirez. And last year these two met in a playoff for the title, and there Kamsky prevailed and became the US champion for I think the 4th time. And in this game we had the French defense, the advanced variation. Knight h6. Usually this kind of an exchange is fine for black. Bishop will come to g7. Let's say something like this. The bishop will come to g7. Let's say castles. And this might not be the best move even. But the thing is, we will take on d4. The queen often comes to b6. We castle. And we play f6. And the center starts to be undermined, and this bishop will be quite strong on this diagonal once we undermine the center. The only thing we have to look out for is some kind of battery here on this diagonal. But with this move order, maybe we can take and then go knight b4 and neutralize this guy. But those are the ideas for black, and usually nobody's taking on h6. So knight a3 was played. Pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4, bishop b4 check. Same thing here. Usually this knight is not taken with the bishop because the bishop is too important to trade for a knight here, because this guy will be really strong. The weakness is all around the black squares, and if white gets an attack going, it's going to be hard to deal with this bishop, who might jump into f6 at some point, something like that. And also we can think about taking now at some point also, because there's no bishop on g7. the bishop before check, and we soon entered an endgame where white might be nominally better with his space advantage and slight lead in development, but black is quick to strike back. He goes f6, typical strike in the French, hitting the white center, pawn takes f6. And look up below, the king comes to d6, typical idea in such endgames. And it's actually now black who has the strong center. And it just looks like white has absolutely nothing here. But Karakamsky is really strong in these types of endgames, you know, where he doesn't really have anything and he just plays on and on. Sort of similar to Carlsen, you might say. And he's quite good at just squeezing out something out of nothing, really. And it seems like Alejandro did quite a good job of containing him. But in the end, Kamsky managed to create some problems. Okay, we had some moves and we got this endgame where everything is equal. But there's pressure on this. And white king is active. And now we get the pawn on d5. However, immediately attack this guy, trying to get one pawn back, and the thing is, it's hard to defend. If you go back with this rook, you know, activity, and there's not much to be done. We don't want to put a rook here, but then we can't really do anything ever. And maybe I even overlooked the king might be in a hairy situation, to say the least. Yeah, well, it's what to do. I totally forgot about that. Yeah. So we can't use this rook, so I use the other rook. Yeah, so black had gone check immediately if rook 5 to d2, so that's just a clear blunder. But here rook takes h2 tactically regains the pawn, and even though white has like a minimal, you know, theoretical edge, it's not enough to win. It seems like because black always has this idea of after rook c5, always has this idea of just going for the pawn ending. If rook takes, king takes, the move a4 completely equalizes and basically ends the game in a draw. Something like this, we can take, and if takes, and then we pick up this guy. And this idea seemed to be enough to hold the draw here, even though black has the, white has the more active pieces, check. Again, if takes on b5, then king b4 next. And now finally a4, and now it's just completely drawn after rook check. Yeah, they didn't really play moves because there's no need to. This is a complete and that draw. So therefore, the draw was agreed in this position of rook a5 check. Okay, moving on. Daniel Naroditsky against Josh Friedel. And in this game we had Carolan, bishop before check, bishop f2, d6. At first glance it looks like, what is black doing? He moves the bishop again. But the thing is, usually this bishop belongs fianchettoed here on b2, and white will have to move this bishop again at some point from d2. So black isn't really losing any time here. But on the other hand, he's cutting down some options that white has in the opening. I mean, like I said, we can't fianchetto. Maybe the knight also come to d2, and yeah, just blocking some lines. So okay, normal development, semi-slab pawn structure similar to what we saw in the Ehrenburg game. Slightly different, but still quite solid. And Naroditsky took an f6, which yeah, is a little bit surprising, giving up the bishop here. But white wants to play e4 and try and gain some foothold in the center. But black refuses to take on e4, which is an interesting choice, and we end up transposing here to a sort of slab exchange type of pawn structure with the white pawn up to e5. And it looks like white has some initiative here with the c-file, but turns out that black is quite quick to neutralize it. And on this move, knight to b8. The knight wasn't really doing much on d7, so we can now reroute it either a6 or after bishop b7, knight c6, and then maybe come to the b4 square. So bishop d3 happened, bishop d7, and now knight c6. So black has managed to regroup. He blocked the c-file, and now he might be even ready to take over the initiative. Has the bishop pair, long-term advantage. And here he found a nice typical move that you often see in the French defense, b5. And here I mean, it looks hanging, but actually it's tactically not, because knight takes e5, a typical pattern that you must know in the French and some other openings. And now if you take on e5, we have the bishop pair, and white has weakened the light square, so that's good for black. And take on d7, then we remove this knight from being attacked, and black is doing fine. This bishop can attack this pawn here, which is isolated, and black has good play down the b file. Maybe put something on c file. And this pawn can run down the board to clamp these pawns, and black will attack them and has a nice game. So this pawn was not taken, and therefore black has somewhat of a space advantage on the queen side, where he's trying to make things happen. And here after a3, Naroditsky decided to sacrifice a pawn. And again, it's like the Ehrenburg game. He didn't want to suffer, so he's trying to create something. But the feeling here is that black should be more than fine. It should be just much better of a pawn. Still with the bishop pair, and the only thing going for white is that this guy is somewhat restricted at the moment by both its own pawns and also by the white pawns. So let's see what happens. Must take on b5 now. But black can, I mean, this c5 square is now under control with the bishop, the queen, and the rook, and black can think about rook c4, doubling on the c-file. I have a feeling black should be just winning here off the pawn. So I went h5, g6. This may or may not have been necessary, and maybe this gave white chances for some counterplay later in the game. Bishop f8. So black is taking his time here, and now g4, trying to open things up. White is just down a pawn, so he must make something happen, and that's what he's trying to do. Rook c3, pawn takes, and yeah, the thing is, if queen takes, it's probably queen check. Then we pick up this guy. So instead, he tried to get counterplay, h5, c2, rook h1, rook c8, queen f3, queen e8, and queen h3. So finally, white is threatening something, but should be easy to block with like bishop g7. But he went bishop h6. Yeah, I didn't want to allow h6, and I think black's idea is if pawn takes, maybe even f5. Still, if we take it, then there's check. King must move. Maybe another check. And black should be fine. Up a pawn with a dangerous pawn here, and we should be able to neutralize this pressure here. Is my feeling. But white didn't take. He went f4, bishop back, and now he took. Okay, this king looks safe. I mean, if we make a check here, simply king here. And that looks okay for the moment, but now knight c5. Finally, this piece, which has been somewhat out of the game, becomes a little bit active. Queen f7, let's go queen f5. So the king retreats, king f3, and not g5. And maybe here we missed that white can, after this, give a check on h7, and now the c2 pawn is hanging. Black should still be doing better, but now rook b2 checks threatened. So this looks like a game where white was in trouble all along, and black looked to be playing a pretty good game, but here this just looks like a perpetual. Can't really do much. And if queen g6, then we can chop it off and take here maybe. When black is suddenly in trouble, I might be the one being threatened with a loss. King h6, then we can start checking here. And that can be tricky. And finally, if bishop f8, then maybe you can play something like more like this, and now this is vulnerable. So looks like black didn't have a choice at this point but to allow the perpetual, and yet another draw. All the games so far have been drawn. So now we come to the last game of this round in the men's department. Lindemann against Gariev, Tibor Gariev. And we had Nimzo with e3. The bishop went back to d6. Interesting move. Counterintuitive, because where do we put this knight? It has to be developed somewhere like here. And that's indeed what happened. a5, trying to facilitate this knight coming to a6 and then c5. You know, so that white can't immediately kick it away with b4. So rook b1. Getting ready to play b4, but rook e8, castles, takes on d5. And he took on d5 because after knight c5 now the knight can go to the e4 square. So b4, that's indeed what happened. Knight to e4. Pawn to f3, knight back, and pawn to e4. So a strong pawn center by white here. If black does nothing, white can start thinking about pushing it. Play bishop g5, maybe protect this pawn, and then try and play f4 and e5. So an important moment here for black, and he went queen e7, attacking this pawn. And yeah, here white gave up a pawn. I think the thing is, if we go bishop d2, the knight takes d5, and this knight on e2 is hanging. So not so easy to protect the pawn. Same thing if we use the queen b3, queen d4, still we can take on d5 and this is hanging. So here he sacrificed the pawn with knight d4. Bishop takes b4, knight f5, hitting the queen, bishop c5 check, removing the bishop from this attack. So now we can move the queen, who was previously defending the bishop. Queen d8, and bishop d5. So black is up a pawn, and actually here he played d6, but it might have been possible to play bishop a6. The point is simply to try and grab more material, and the main point is, if we're here, we can actually play this move, knight takes e4. Because if he takes our queen, knight f2 check, and look up below, we capture the queen. And black's gonna win. It should be clear. So maybe bishop a6 is critical here. However, d6 was played, f4, bishop a6, rook e1, and now things got interesting after bishop c8. White took on g7, sacrificing a piece. King took and queen c2. White has ideas like queen c3, pawn to e5. various ideas. Let's look first at what's wrong with e5 immediately. I'm not sure, as I haven't looked at this before, but do we have similar ideas before with knight e4? If we take it, then queen takes d5. It's fine for black, he's up a piece. No imminent checkmate, and again, if it takes here, knight f2 check, discover check. And we should, yeah, I mean, okay. If king here, bishop a6 check, if king here, knight f2 check, and we just pick up the piece, and now we're up 2 pieces even. So that might be why queen c2 was played, because now there's no knight check on f2, working the queen and the king. Another remarkable move, king g6, moving into the discovered attack. And yeah, this move has two ideas. One idea is as happened in the game, e5, bishop f5. Protecting this bishop, blocking the check and protecting the bishop. The other idea is actually just capture this bishop in case of e5 and some other variations. Can't remember which ones, but let's imagine that this one is not check after e5 takes. King takes g5 in some lines is just working. Let's say like here also. Yeah, queen takes. Oh, okay. That was supposed to be a shocker, man. What are you doing? Yeah, let's take, for instance, here like queen b2 or something. Now we might be able to just take here and simply take with the king on g5. That's what I was talking about. And this looks just simply winning for black. Up a piece, and the king will just retreat on the next move, and not much going on. So instead, Lenderman played the shocker here, which I already spoiled for you. Queen takes f5. Queen takes f5. Remarkable, sacrificing the queen for a bishop, but things are okay for black. King takes f5, bishop takes f6, and if nothing else, we can just sacrifice the queen right back with queen takes f6. And indeed, we have to sacrifice the queen right back because queen here allows quick mate, bishop h3 check, king here, f5, king somewhere, and then rook here to here, which will give mate. We can even go this way as well, and there are some nice mates here, like takes here and bishop h4, Czechoslovakia. So, Timur played pawn takes e5, which is actually the best move according to the computer. Bishop takes d8, rook takes d8, bishop e4 check, bishop takes h7, pawn takes f4, and at the end of all these fireworks we have an endgame which should be just better for black, because you can attack this pawn. Once the bishop comes here, it's hitting this one, it's also hitting this one, and the rook can hit the bishop and this pawn, so maybe black is just winning a pawn here. Bishop d6 was played, this was defended, but now rook h8, bishop moves back, and rook h4, hitting this pawn with 2 pieces, and if the pawn moves then this guy is falling, so black's going to win a pawn here. Still we have the opposite colored bishop, so that gives slight drawing chances to white, but it looks like black is doing fine here with its winning chances because the b-pawn is quite dangerous and it's hard to coordinate the white pieces. Let's go forward a few moves to the critical point, which is around here, I think. Oh, one more move. h5. Okay. Now this position should be winning, but here Timur went for rook takes b3, and that seems unnecessary. There have been pointed out some wins like I think rook b1 or bishop d4, just taking his time. But it looks like he must have miscalculated something, because rook b1, pawn advanced, king up, pawn advanced, king up. And this all seems forced to take the pawn on b1. Important not to take it on b2 because then we're losing tempo. Now the king is further away. And king e4. Attacking bishop, winning the pawn. Because this bishop must keep an eye on the queen square. So h7. Now we take the pawn. And we're simply in time to attack the c7 pawn. Bishop e5, but now h8 queen and get the pawn. And this is completely drawn. The only way to try to do something was king here. But I guess we can play d6. If pawn takes, it's a complete draw. If pawn here, and king here, and black must watch out not to lose. So bishop e5 was well played and complete draw here. So all the games in the men's division were drawn in this round. Quite remarkable because usually we have some good fighting chairs, and indeed we did. None of the games was a really short draw. All of them were fighting games, but still all of them ended in a draw. Quite remarkable. So let's jump on over to the women's championship. Okay, jumping on over to the women's championship. Top seed Irina Krush playing against 13-year-old talent Esfaran, who won on her debut in the first round. Asrita Esfaran, rated 1979, but clearly an up-and-coming player, 13 years old. Unfortunately for her, in this game, which was a hedgehog, an English opening transposing to a hedgehog. Here, one critical bit of knowledge. Again, always pimping my pattern recognition videos. Knight d7 is a known blunder here because e5. The undefended bishop on b7 and hedgehog. Take on e5, simply lose a piece. And taking g2, we take on f6, and now two pieces are attacked, and we can't defend both of them. So that's why knight fd7 was played, bishop e3, knight e5, b3. So on a little bit unusual move order for black here in the hedgehog, but usually that doesn't really matter. But maybe knight c6 was a mistake, because how do you defend this pawn? You simply don't, and black sacrificed it. And at this level, Irina Krush, she's a grandmaster. You can't lose a pawn like this against a grandmaster. From here, it was smooth sailing for Irina. So knight jumped into e6, so up a pawn. Positional advantage as well, space advantage with the pawns. Good control over d-file. Really no counterplay whatsoever for black. You can't take on e6 because bishop here. So white is simply penetrating, and here queen d8 check resigns because king here. Bishop c4 is checkmate. So a quick win there for Irina Krush. Moving on to Nemkova and Senyuk. This game was drawn. Let's have a quick look. Accelerated Dragon. Non-theory, I'm not sure e6 is the most common move here, but I have a feeling Senyuk is well prepared here. d5. And we enter an endgame here. And let's see if something critical happened. Knight takes b3. Yeah, opposite color bishops. Some exchanges. This is maybe slightly better for white because active king, better bishop, but the opposite color bishops make this quite difficult. And yeah, not much happened, and it just agreed to draw here. So, okay, moving on to Anna Santonsky, who is the second seed and constantly battling with Crush for these titles. And this time she's playing against the third seed, Tatyev Abrahamian, who has been doing quite well recently. So this is an interesting matchup in the women's department. And another French defense, advanced variation, knight f3, queen e6, a3. This is the most common way for white to play, more or less. b4. I usually played with knight h6 here for black instead of bishop d7, but most likely it will transpose. Rook c8 immediately, knight h6 now, and now knight g4. Okay, black gets this bishop on e3, and g6. Okay, should be okay. Bishop h6 attacking this. Probably getting rid of the castle, which is what she did. Important that this queen is here protecting the knight, otherwise we would have some discoveries with this knight on this knight, but let's protect it. g4, 97, rook c1. And even though black has the bishop pair, black is a bit cramped here, so not an open position, maybe not a good position for the bishops. Black would ideally in French like to play bishop b5 to exchange these bishops, but that's hard to do here. And white has ideas like maybe moving the h-pawn and maneuvering a knight here to f6, which could be dangerous. So black is a little bit tight down here. So it looks like white is well in control here. Knight went to d2. Okay, now she wants to block the queen side with knight to c5 here. Knight f5. This knight looks nice, but at any point it could be chopped up with bishop takes f5. Knight takes b5. And bishop takes f5. Okay. Here white can use her pawns a little bit more dynamically here with h5. And then think about h6 or g6, depending on how things happen here. But looks like she found some tactic here. Knight to d7. Now if we take, then white has simply won the exchange. So she took on c1. But is the idea to take on b6? Yeah, rook e1, rook e1. And if rook c3, it seems like the most logical move. What does white play here? We have to be careful because like a4, then maybe bishop f8 hits this pawn. Can't defend this pawn. But maybe we can go rook a1. Rook takes here, rook here, trying to penetrate. It's a little bit shaky. I want to see what's he. King f2. Okay, same idea. If rook takes a3, rook c1. So h6, he makes it look for a king. Now we're threatening to take, so probably we have to defend the pawn now. No, knight d7. Takes, and she took the pawn. Took her pawn! So, knight f6 check. Wow. Interesting. He's trying to get this advanced pawn here on f6. So sacrificing a pawn, but on the other hand, I mean, these pawns are doubled. So maybe not a big deal. Pawn takes f6. And now white will try and win this pawn. So a complex game here. Threatening mate now. So that wins time. King has to move, and now rook f8. We have to take with check, and we can't really do anything. King g6, then we go check in here. And yeah, that's what happened. Rook g7 takes on b4, takes on f7. And yeah, e6 is gonna fall. Now we have double connected pass pawns. This rook can block this. Yeah, and then take this if and when we want. King comes over. And it's just near enough because now we don't have this trick rook here trying to skewer the king and the rook because the king is close enough to tap it. So now white's up 2 pawns and the pawn is well defended here, so not gonna be many moves here. Yeah, and white wins. So a good win by Anna Santonski. 2 moves to 1.5. So a quick look at Malakina against Voiceover, because another French and another advanced variation. And interesting game, because Alisa Malakina made a video on this variation for white in the advanced variation for onlinechesslessons.net. I think this is actually quite an interesting variation where white gets really good play for the pawn. So let's see what happened. I mean, this looks a little bit artificial, because I mean, both knights want to be on f5, so the other one is a little bit silly. So knight h4, bishop e3, bishop e4, and knight g8. So white has a good lead in development for the pawn. Knight b5, bishop c6, bishop d4. And also, a little bit of a positional clan with these bishops. White has good space here, and once black castles, we can think about f4, f5 attacking. So black didn't castle, so he went h5. Knight d6 check, and this can play king f8. Surely you must take this, but that looks ugly. Yeah, you have to play king f8. No, she could take. I was worried about this, but let's see what happens. Took on g4. Wow, okay. You take on e7. What's going on here? Is black just getting a big attack here? Took on g4. Do we have time for f6, e5? Black really wants to activate this bishop here on this diagonal. So maybe f6, e5, d4 is one idea. Let's just simply place king d7. Bishop b5, neutralizing this bishop. Black has what, 2 pawns for the piece? Now f6. This should be fine for white. I mean, surely not lost, so I'm curious what happened here. Well, these pawns are actually quite good at the moment, and some coordination problems for white, that's true. Yeah, this bishop hasn't managed to enter the game. Black is getting really active with his pawns. I mean, e5 is coming at some point here. Yeah, like right now. So interesting. The pawns are getting really dangerous. Now we have an attack on f2. And wow, this just looks. Yeah, we're gonna take on f5 quite soon, or play king f. Yeah, king f3 is the bigger threat. Yeah, f6, king f3. Threatening mate, nothing to be done. Sequence takes f2, but probably the ending is just lost. Well, not probably, it's just lost. We're just going to advance the d pawn and pick up the b and a pawn. Yeah, that's even better. Nice. There's no stalemate because we take not with the c pawn stalemate, but with the a pawn. And now white has no moves but to push the pawn. Then we make a rook. b1 equals rook. Comprende? Capiche. Boom. Checkmate. So yeah, c4 also. Yes, he played b4. Yeah, we can't take with the a pawn, but c4 is actually quicker, followed by c3, c2. A quicker win, as you didn't notice. So last game of this tournament, well, not the tournament, the second round was Camille Wagenscheid against Victoria Nie. And the Jack Benoni, I like it. Hoping that I play a lot. Knight b7, h3, castles, knight e8 will come next. Black wants to play bishop g5 once this knight moves, but g4 is an active approach by white, trying to grab all the space. Bishop h6, knight g7, knight f6, sometimes black plays king h8, knight g8, trying to push this knight away. a6, rook g1, b5. Yeah, sacrificing this pawn, but it's dangerous for white to take it, so she wants to keep control, not take it. Rook b8, knight g2, knight e3. No, knight f5, yeah. A nice sacrifice. I mean, not really complicated because we take. There's no way to defend this. So knight takes f5, but now there's a threat here. The g file is opened. Looks a little bit dangerous. Black. Okay, maybe white could have taken the exchange, but elected not to. And finally, black got his or her desired exchange of the black squared bishops, but it's too late now. f5, good move. You can't allow black to get the e5 square, that's what he wants, so f5, good move. Queen h6 check, king must go to e7. And yeah, pawn takes f5 is one idea. Rook g7, yeah, and now queen g6 maybe. Threatening this guy. Queen f8. And how can we increase the pressure? One idea is to take, go knight e4, queen e6. Do we have time for that? f5. Queen takes f5 and queen takes g7, okay. I missed that because after takes rook g8 the queen is trapped. So it takes on h8. And now everything's equal. Looks like the worst is over black. Oh yeah, this game was drawn, so just a quick look here. I think black should be doing fine here, and in the end it looks like it was white who was the one saving the draw. Yeah, I went over it, I thought white won, but now it turns out that yeah, king c6 knight here, check. And it looks like white managed to liquidate here, because now we protect the pawn, we just take, and there's no material. So, yep, last game we looked in this round, and yet another draw. So all the games in the men's department were drawn. So nobody on course for the $64,000, which are given to the one who gets 11 out of 11. You know, the Bobby Fischer prize, who won the US Championship with 11 out of 11. Many years ago. But in the women's championship, Ira Crush and Sabina Francisca Foyshore are both on 2 out of 2. So interesting to see how things develop. I will get cracking with round 3 pretty soon, and yeah, that was round 2. Thanks for watching if you're still here, and see you later. Bye bye.